Hey, I'm glad we get to be together, and you'll have to pay a little extra attention as I've lost my voice. But I'm excited. I'm excited to dive into it with you. Have you ever been in an unknown situation? Anybody? Or been lost? Anybody been lost before? Yep. yeah. I remember I was either a junior or senior in high school. And me and a couple buddies decided we were going to go hiking. Anybody been to the Channels up in Virginia? You know, the fire tower, and there's the rocks there. And we had never been. And so we typed it into our GPS, and we were going to the Channels. And the GPS took us to the wrong place. And so we get to what we thought was the path, and we, pass a parking lot and then go drive up a path. And when we get to this location, there's a couple guys knocking down trees. And they were like, hey, yeah, you can get to the Channels from here. It's going to take you a long time, but it's okay. Just go park at the parking lot, and then we'll walk back up here. So we do that. It takes a little bit of time, but we finally get past the guys cutting down trees, and we start going down the path. But the path looked like it hadn't been cut down or anybody had been on it in a long time. And it was very grassy. And so I stood in the back because I was a smart one, and I had a couple guys go in front of me, and as they start to approach this grassy path, they hear a rattle. And come to find out there were rattlesnakes there. One of my friends tried to kill one. Not a good idea. Shouldn't do that. I ran the other way. But I'm like, if there was one there in that grassy path, there's a lot more on the way. So we decided, you know what? Not worth going this route. Let's go back to the car. So we had already been out there for a little bit. He still wanted to go. So we went to somebody's house, knocked on the door, and said, hey, how do we get to the Channels? And they told us where to go. And so we pull into a parking lot with nice signage, which would have been nice the first time we got there. And it said, hey, here's the Channels. And so we started walking on the path. And it came to a crossroad moment where either we go down to the left or we go up to the right. Remember, we're looking for a fire tower, and there's the rocks up there. So it makes sense. What would I choose? Go up the hill, right? That's what we did. So we walk up that path for a little bit, nice gravel path. And we get up to the top and look across, and the fire tower's on the other mountain. And not a fun place to be in. So we had a choice. Do we continue? Do we go home? We'd been out there a while. We figured we might as well do it. So we go back down to that crossroad moment, and we go down, and come to find out it would take us about 2 hours to get there. And then by the time that we got back to the Jeep and got home, we had left around noon, and it was probably 9 o'clock. Long day. And we were lost. I don't know how many of you all have ever been in that situation, but it's not a fun situation to be in, especially when the GPS told you where to go. You thought you knew where you were, but you weren't actually in the right place. We can be lost in that kind of physical sense, but a lot of times we can be lost and in the unknown in our spiritual sense too. We don't know where to go. We don't know what steps that we need to take. We don't know where we need to go. And that's where we kind of find the Israelite people here, and we're going to be starting in Joshua chapter 1. And for 40 years, these Israelites, they have been trying to get through the wilderness. They are wandering around. They're in an unknown. They're in a lost place, and they have to depend and rely on God to take them where they need to go. Moses is now gone. He's passed away, and so Joshua is kind of stepping in to fill his shoes. And they were in the midst of an unknown situation, and here they are, where we're going to be at today. They're at the last obstacle. And they've got to figure out how in the world do we get through it. And a lot of times we face those obstacles when we step into the unknown. And we've got to learn how to step with confidence into the unknown. And so in some of my slides here, you're going to see some red letters. And that's not the words of Jesus that we see in some of the Bible translations. Those are just things that I want to highlight because we're going to come back to those, okay? So Joshua chapter 1 says this. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, Moses' aide, Moses, my dear servant, is dead. Now then, you and all the people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land that I am about to give them to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, to all the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. He's telling them this is what it's going to look like for you. No one will be able to stand against you in all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. He goes on. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to my ancestors, to their ancestors, to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey the law my servant Moses gave you. Don't turn from it, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you're careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. And he says, have I not commanded you? He's reminding them again. Be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. He's reminding them over and over again. You might be in the wilderness. You might be in the unknown. But remember, I'm here with you. So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your provisions ready. 3 days from now, you will cross the Jordan here to go in and take possession of the land your God is giving you for your own. And so let's fast forward there to Joshua chapter 3. It says, early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out to Shittim. You got to be careful with that one. I had to make sure to look that one up. And went to the Jordan River, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move out from your positions to follow it. Now, you might be confused by the Ark of the Covenant. What that is God ordered them and said, hey, the Ark of the Covenant is going to represent my presence with you. And so here's how you build it. Here's how you do it. You're going to take it wherever you go. And it says, as that moves, that's where you're going to go too. Where God's presence is, that's where you need to go. And then he says in verse 4, then you will know which way to go, since you have never seen or never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits. In our day and age, that's about 3,000 feet. Between you and the ark, don't go near it, but follow it. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. And so Joshua said to the priests, take the Ark of the Covenant, pass on ahead of the people. And so they did it. And verse 7 says this, and the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in all the eyes of Israel, so that they may know that I am with you, as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant. This is important language here. When you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river. Here in a minute, you're going to see how fast that river moves. You wouldn't have done that, but just stick with me. Joshua said to the Israelites, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites. I'm going to skip down a couple verses to verse 13. Sorry. And as soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. Now pay attention to verse 15. Now the Jordan is at flood stage. It's flooding here. And when it's at flood stage, we know it's probably around springtime, probably in April, and during the harvest season. Typically, the Jordan River is about 90 to 100 feet in width. It's about 3 to 10 foot deep. Typically, it's going to be flowing about 2 to 6 miles an hour. But when the Jordan River is at flood stage, I have a video for you. This is what the Jordan River looks like at flood stage. And so this is the obstacle that the Israelite people are facing. But God says, go and step foot in that. That's scary to step foot in. And this is the active moment of the flood, but here in a minute, you're also going to see not the greatest quality. Here's good quality of the afterwards, a flood stage at the Jordan River. And in our area, we've seen a lot of this recently, but it's just crazy to think what they might have been facing, as this was kind of the final obstacle of getting to where they needed to go. The Jordan River is at flood stage, and it wouldn't have been easy for them to get through where they needed to go through with this kind of flooding. The Jordan River, when it's at flood stage, can go from normal width of 90 to 100 feet up to 1 mile wide. And when it's at flood stage, it can be 10 to 12 miles per hour plus with its flow, which makes it not possible for us to get across. And it says that flood stage can last up to 2 months there. That's a long time. This is what they're facing. They're in the midst of the wilderness. They're in the midst of some really hard moments, but they're so close to the promised land. And then God says, hey, go and step foot in the Jordan. Go and step foot in the Jordan River in that crazy flooding and watch what happens. It goes on in verse 15. Yet as soon as the priest who carried the ark reached the Jordan, and their feet touched the water's edge. It doesn't say they had to jump in it or dive in it or swim into it. When their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing, and it piled up in a heap at a great distance away, at a town called Adam, in the vicinity of Zarethan, while the water flowing down from the Dead Sea was completely cut off, so the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priest who carried the Ark of the Covenant stood in the middle of the Jordan and stood on dry ground. That's significant. While all Israel passed by, until the whole nation went through on dry ground. This isn't the first time we've seen this. Years and years before, God parted the waters and they walked through on dry ground, which reminds me that God is there with us then and he is now. But what a beautiful story that it says, just take a step into the water and watch me work. Those guys were carrying the Ark of the Covenant, and once they stepped into the water, it did what God said was going to happen. I'm not sure that happens without the presence of God. And sometimes we try to step into an unknown, or we try to step into a hard season without God, and we end up in the wrong place. But when we have the presence of God, we just have to take the step where he is, and God is going to continue to work in our lives. And I don't know what that unknown place is for you, but I know that he might be calling you there today. The Jordan River ultimately is a place of decision. It was okay, Israelite people, you have a decision here. You can either hold back and wait for possibly 2 months, or you can be on my timeline and you can take a step. And they had two options. It was either to take a step into the scary unknown of that floodwater, or it was to be disobedient. And a lot of times God's calling us to do something, and when we don't do it, we're being disobedient. But it's a place of decision. The Jordan River is a place of decision, but it's also a place of new life, because once they get past it, new life is coming. And about 1,400 years later, Jesus would be baptized in that same river, which signifies new life and decision. We have to step into the water too. God called his Israelite people. You might be stepping into an unknown, but I am there. My presence is there, and that's okay. When we step into the unknown, when God is calling us where we need to go, when we take that step and he's there, it's all going to work out according to his will and to his plan. A couple of weeks ago when I was speaking, I threw out this quote that as you go along the way appears. As you take the steps start to appear. A lot of times in life, we want to know what the big picture destination of our life is, but God doesn't work that way. He says, no, take the step, and then I'm going to give you the next step, and the next step, and the next step. As you go along the way will appear. And it reminds me of a GPS. And I want to show you a video, and I know where Los Jalapenos is, because I go there once a week. But I can type in Los Jalapenos, but I'm not going to know the directions of where I need to go until I press that word go. And then once I press that word go, and I'll start to head towards Los Jalapenos, it's going to give me the directions on where I need to go. So I know right now, 0.2 miles, I'm going to take a right. I don't know what the next turn is yet until I take the turn. And now I know I've only got about half a mile until I take the next turn. And then once I take the next turn, it's going to tell me where I need to go next. And when it comes to taking a step into the unknown, or really walking with God in general, we don't always know what the next step is. Or at least the next couple. But he is guiding us and directing us and saying, hey, here's the first step. If you and I decided that we were going to take a trip to Los Angeles, we all in the room know where Los Angeles is, right? We know where it is. If we were going to do that, we would know where it is in the country, but we wouldn't know how to get there from here. We would have to have a GPS to tell us where to go. And in order for us to get there, we have to press go on the GPS, and we have to start moving in the direction of Los Angeles. But I don't know what turn I need to make when I get to Arkansas yet. But I know what turn I need to make to get out onto the highway. But as you go, the way will appear. As you take the turn, the next turn will appear. And when we step into the unknown sometimes, we have to know that God has the bigger picture, and we don't. And so we just have to trust him, and we have to take the steps. Once you take the first turn, it will reveal the second one. And you know, the good news about a GPS is that if I'm driving to Los Jalapenos this week, and I take a wrong turn, it will recalculate me back to the right path. But I've got to make the choice to get back on it. And sometimes in our life, we continue to make the wrong choice. But God says, I will bring you back, but you have to walk in my plan. You have to walk in my will. You have to take those steps over and over and over again. And I wish the day that me and my buddies went hiking that we knew exactly what we were getting ourselves into. I wish we would have had it all figured out. But in the midst of that, you learn and you grow. And in life, we don't always have it figured out. But when God calls us into the unknown, he will guide us. But we have a choice, just like the Israelite people. It was either to take the step into the scary unknown, or it was to be disobedient. And I don't know what that is for you. I don't know what that unknown is for you. I don't know what that situation is in your life, whether it's spiritual or it's physical. But I know that God is calling you to something, and it can be scary. I've walked into a lot of those situations. But I've learned that if I try to do it my own way, it's not going to work. But if I can walk in the way of God, if I can take the step in the presence of God and watch him work, it's going to be better than anything that I could have ever done. If those Israelites would have sat there and waited and waited and waited and waited, who knows what would have happened? But God called them to take a step. And so what do we do with this? How do we step with confidence into the unknown? Again, I don't know what your unknown is, but I know that if you're not approaching an unknown right now, that it's going to come at some point. How do we step with confidence into the unknown? It takes us back to Joshua chapter 1 and these three phrases. Number one, be strong and courageous. That seemed to be really important in Joshua chapter 1. He was reminding the Israelite people, be strong and courageous. This might be a scary moment, but don't you know that I've been faithful to you throughout the whole entire wilderness up to this point? I'm going to continue to be faithful. Be strong and courageous, because I don't give you a power or a spirit of fear. I give you a spirit of power. He says, be strong and courageous. He says, don't be afraid or discouraged. And if I'm stepping into that water, I'm a little afraid. But he reminds us of that too. Because when you and we step into those moments in life that can be unknown or scary, it can be hard, but he's reminding us, Trust me, I'm there. I'm working. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be discouraged. And number 3, he reminds them of this, to remember that the Lord is with you. The Israelite people did not walk through the Jordan River without the presence of God. In fact, it was because of the presence of God that they were able to get through it in the first place. And so I want to remind you of that. I don't know what your thing is. I don't know what your unknown moment is in your life right now. But I do know that when you get there, or if you're in it, that you can be strong and courageous, that you don't have to be afraid or discouraged because God is with you. In the Bible, when things are repeated, it's important. That was repeated 3 times in the first 11 verses of Joshua. That seems pretty important. In the midst of unknown, cling to this because he is hope and he provides for us in the wilderness and in the unknown. Can we pray together? God, thank you. Thank you for all that you do for us. God, we might be facing unknowns of what job to be in or what college to go to or what to do to handle the relationship issue that I have. But God, we know that in the midst of whatever that next step is, that unknown, that you're already there and that you've mapped this thing out. You know what the destination is on the GPS. And what you're doing is calling and asking us to just be faithful with the next step, to be obedient with the next step. God, remind us today that we can lean on you in the wilderness, that we can lean on you in the unknown, and that we can make that step with confidence, even though it might be scary, because we know you're there. God, thank you for all you do for us. It's in your Son's name. Amen.